Hey guys, this is one not to miss. I caught up with James Patrick again. He's traveling as always. He's doing a PhD on the deeper kind of science and mathematics of the Great Taking and all the legal aspects of the system set up over 50 years to slowly and steadily get everything legally set up to take all of our securities, bonds, bank balances in the event of a derivatives market crash, which could very well happen in this fourth turning. So crucial stuff to know about. We have a great conversation. Enjoy. And as I mentioned during the conversation, and James agrees, I've moved a large tranche of family pension, etc., into physical gold, not paper gold. And there's a link down below to Pure Gold, who gives some free storage and great advice on all things financial. So the link is down below if you want to take advantage of that and simply explore the arena. And I'll also put a link to Mike Maloney's latest video. He's an expert in these matters. It's just interesting as gold wobbles and the markets are kind of probably heading into a bit of lunacy, that Mike is still making the case rather eloquently, going back 100 years, why it's still never too late to move a chunk of assets into physical gold. It's crucially important now more than ever, as James will eloquently point out. Here you go. Hey guys, I'm working down on location at the moment in the middle of nowhere, but at least there's sun in Ireland for once. And I've connected again with James Patrick, who is the maker of the movie Planet Lockdown, which had huge success back in those crazy days, and now is the maker of the newly released Stop It, The Great Taking. And that's what I want to talk to you, James, about.
How you doing, Ivor? Thanks for having me on again.
Not at all. This is a great topic. I picked up on David Webb's work back in 23, I think, in a Sweden Freedom Conference, and stunned by what he could reveal. So maybe you can give the synopsis now, which I guess is the synopsis of the film in a sense, but is now updated. There's a fight back. Where's it all going?
Yeah, so I met him at the same conference and then asked him if he wanted to do a film, and that kind of resulted in this film. But I'm also doing a PhD on whether money, banking, and finance it's either the foundation of prosperity or means of subjugating people. So it gives some history, and the second half is really the CBDC issue I did that other film on, and now and this securities issue that David sort of busted out into the world in a big way. This is sort of this open secret in the world of finance that basically since the 60s or even maybe longer, the financial service providers like brokers, custodians, big banks have been using their clients' stocks and bonds as collateral on their own trades. And this practice became more and more widespread. And I have, David has been advising me, and then several other bankers. So basically, I've been hearing that basically in the 80s, it got to be just ubiquitous across the financial services industry, where all of our stocks and bonds are surreptitiously being used. Not all of them, but I mean some of them. And then this practice in the 90s was legalized in the U.S. through some creation of these kind of legal structures to defend to protect this practice. And then so there's been a series of laws changed in the 90s, 2000s. Bankruptcy law was changed. We can get into some of these things. But basically the way this, we've all heard of fractional reserve banking, or maybe we have, where our deposits are being lent out by the banks and then re-let out. And then so if you have a 10% reserve, you put $100 in the bank, kind of it translates into 1,000 in the system through this re-lending out. Well, the same sort of things was started to be done with our stocks and bonds, where they're being levered up and rehypothecated into really this derivatives, what's now this huge $2 quadrillion derivatives bubble. So banking went from these deposit taking activities, and since the 80s, 90s, really now the main money markets are these repo contracts, repurchase agreements. And there's some real problems with that market that make it susceptible to a quick, rapid collapse. And we can get into that a little bit, but this is kind of what David's pointing out. He's saying they're using the stocks and bonds. That was one big point, that this repo contract money market is sort of prone to this system-wide failure. This is exactly the kind of contracts that blew up in 1929. Those are called margin loans. They were giving margin loans on to buy stocks. So brokers were lending money to their customers to buy stocks. That gave this roaring 20s, and then it collapsed in the 30s. That was banned, and then the financial services industry sort of rebranded them as repurchase agreements. It was a very similar contract, but in a different structure to get around that prohibition. Um, so anyway, I'm kind of in the midst of researching this a lot and digging into it and getting my head around it, and going to start advising people on this issue, like how to. It's kind of an unrealized risk, and yeah, I guess the long and the short of it is, if they're using, however, there's $130 trillion of stocks and bonds in the U.S. and EU, kept now in these dematerialized form, where we no longer have certificates. It's all kept in digital form, and then that enables a very swift, efficient use of this stocks and bonds as collateral, and then not that all of it's being used, maybe 30, 50 trillion of it's being used again and again and again to prop up a sort of $2 quadrillion derivatives market. And if there's a downturn in the price of the derivatives market and there's all these calls for collateral, we can see this huge, what these BIS documents are calling like margin spirals. And then we get a kind of the basically the biggest banks will be able to take everyone's stocks and bonds. And that's what David's calling the great taking in his book.
And yeah, that was the huge revelation, really, that all the legal machinery was put in place, as well as the rehypothecation and what you've described there. But the great taking piece, that they've put in legislation all over the world, America first, all 50 states, state by state, carefully, because they couldn't go up to federal, or someone would get eyes on it and say, hold on, what are we doing here? So state by state, they changed it, and then they got in the blower to Europe and got the European Commission to change it country by country, until everyone across the West is in this legal system where, when the bubble bursts, spectacularly I would guess, it's not like we all lose our shirt. JP Morgan and the big banks have preferred status in the new rules, so we all lose our shirts, even billionaires lose their shirts, but not the very big secured creditor banks. It's very sinister, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of like so this practice was going on a while, and it was fraud. I mean, they're using the client assets, just like the old goldsmiths back in the day started using the people's gold deposits and lending them out. And then they needed a new sort of legal structure to do this legally. And so in 1994, the decision was made, okay, well, let's introduce, in the 1994 revision of Article 8 of the UCC, they introduced two important legal concepts. One was that they created this term: you no longer own your securities, your stocks and bonds directly. You have legal title. You own a securities entitlement or contractual claim on a security. So, and then when your stocks are being used as collateral in derivatives contracts, the secured creditors of those contracts now have priority to your securities ahead of you in the event that they go bankrupt. And then they said the practice of the firms was to keep all this securities in a pooled account, and then just kind of lend them out, like use them or lend them out for renting it, not telling the client, not paying the client for the use. I guess if the clients agreed to it and get a kickback on it, then that would be more kosher, right? But if they're not informed, they're not told. Even big sophisticated investors, huge funds, your pension funds, your retirement funds, they're all like this. But then also, so anyway, they changed the law also in the code to say you only get a pro rata share of what's left off, or a proportional share of what's left over of the bankrupt firm. So the firm's playing with the stocks and bonds out of a pooled account. And then if they go bust, you only get a proportional share of what's left over out of the pooled account. So these laws were just written really to the clear benefit of the derivatives market industry. But I'm learning now more, like all of the laws now are geared up to benefit the repo market, which really is the main lifeblood of the financial system now. So we're really at a cross, and actually this JP Morgan created Euroclear, this Central Securities Depository, in 1968 in Belgium. That's all where all the European securities are cleared. 1967, they changed the constitution in Belgium to allow this. 1968, they created Euroclear. And JP Morgan really years later led the development of the repo market. So some people are saying JP Morgan is Rothschild and that this is their, but this one firm is really kind of creating the repo market, which is kind of inherently uh, prone to collapse because you're like okay, if you put a security down as collateral, on an initial margin, you call it initial margin on a derivative. You say you got to put some money down to activate the contract, and if the market goes down, there's calls for more collateral for them to you have to pony up more money to keep it alive, or they take the collateral. So if there's it's inherently, if you see any downturns in the market, you can get this massive collateral call. They start selling all the collateral regardless of the price. So it's these BIS documents call it death spirals, these margin spirals. So that's just really, there's a lot of I'm reading a lot of papers now critiquing that, saying how this is inherently prone to collapse. So this is not really, a lot of financial firms haven't factored that into their risk assessments.
Yeah, but I mean, the proof points are there. I mean, the GFC or Great Financial Crisis 2008. Funny enough, James, last night I watched with my daughter and my wife Margin Call with Jeremy Irons and Kevin Spacey. It's actually quite fun to watch. So if people just pick that up on well, not Netflix maybe, but wherever, one of those movie sites like Movies Joy where you get it for nothing. But it's just watching it gives you a great feel for the type of madness that you're talking about. I know slightly different conditions with the CDO squared and all that crazy stuff, but it gives people a feel for what can happen. And that's at a small level, in a sense, relative to what we're potentially talking about. This is real as cancer, as they say. This is not some hypothetical thing. And for people, well, I guess there's more to go through before we get to that, but for safety, I mean, I took a simple position in 2020 before I met David Webb, along with yourself in 2023. I moved pension and family assets, such as they are, to the safety of physical gold. Now, obviously, that's turned out really well. But even long term, physical gold is one thing, but what are some other things that keep you safe from the madness? So when around you all are losing their heads, if there is a great kind of accelerated crash event, and everyone's really getting burnt and not even understanding why, but they'll take it, they'll have no choice by the legislation, the law is on the side of JP and the boys. What other things are there to secure yourself or your family or your pension besides physical gold and physical metals? I guess there's a couple more things here and there.
I mean, if you're in the US, you can get these physical share certificates. If you're like individually owning them, you can request them. But if the market's collapsing, I don't know. I mean, yeah, gold would probably be the only real thing that would just like not be phased, or maybe even spike a little bit. But I mean, we're generally just kind of screwed anything in the market. That's why people really don't want to hear about this. I'm starting to write this report on this issue. And it's like, no one wants to hear about it because it's like depressing, and it's like, fund managers don't want to hear about it because it's like all their clients will run off if they knew about it. I mean, and then I don't know. It's just sort of like a depressing topic to go talk about. So I don't know
Well,
really what else you could do. I mean, if really one another insight David had in his book was that in the 29 crash, then you had these bankruptcies, then you had bank failures, then 1933 they seized the gold in the US, and the gold was really the foundation of the financial system at that time. And then now really the base of the financial system is everyone's bonds, stocks and bonds. That's this sort of lifeblood of this repo market. Um, and that so that this could be a setup for another 29 style crash. The idea was JP Morgan's ginned up this repo market, sexed it up, made it a big thing, and now they're getting us ready for like this collapse scenario where then they can sweep everyone's stocks and bonds. Really, they would have ultimately kind of flow to the too big to fail banks, and then from there kind of out to the owners, the secured creditors. But they put in, now I'm researching this issue of priority. You get these, if you got like if the same collateral is being used again and again and again on many, many contracts, you get these chains of secured creditors that all have priority ahead of this entitlement holder. But you'll have these collateral contests of who gets to be first, who gets to take the bag of gold. And then it's like, and it's really, there's something in the laws that say that the too big to fail banks essentially have super priority. And that's that they get the first dibs in the end when the house of cards falls.
In one sense, James, unsurprisingly, okay? Because this, though it sounds conspiracy theory like, in a way it just inevitably follows everything of the past century or more, where unfortunately the reality is the super powerful banking cartels, they've got a lot of politicians, a lot of influence. I mean, Nathan Rothschild said something like, give me control of the money supply and I care not who makes the nation's laws. I mean, this guy, the richest man in the world, he's not joking 100 years ago when he said that. So unfortunately, this is a reality. Now, I always like to focus more on the positive, hence I quite quickly got into, well, what can you do, to get into solutioning for the little people.
Yeah, so I guess something we can do about it is in the US, there's this effort to amend Article 8 of the UCC. That was sort of the basic legal foundation of the legalization, the fundamental foundational legalization of this stuff that was then integrated in the EU law in from 2004. So this 1994 revision of Article 8 of the Uniform Commercial Code was then integrated into EU in 2004 to 2014 across the different EU countries. But so there's an effort that this film I did called Stop It, the Great Taking was really about the 2024-2025 legislative season where David and I went to South Dakota and Tennessee and documented these laws put forth to amend Article 8. And essentially the way it was written was that it said the entitlement holder has priority, entitlement holder has priority, except all the time when the secured creditor has priority. So they had these exceptions written in it a couple times, and we just proposed to strike the exceptions in the code. It was very sneaky with the way it was written. It was very like obtuse. It sounded good when you read the beginning of it, and you look in the bottom and page 2 and 3. There's all these exceptions, basically granting these central securities depositories, these big warehouses of all the people's stocks and bonds that when you buy them, they're really kept up at this higher level and played with from there. They said, oh, well, these clearinghouses have are fully allowed to do this, So it's just like super sneaky. And then I think so I don't know, in the US, you can call your state legislator and tell them I want to amend Article 8. And there's a legal team to help the legislators do that. In EU, it's a little more complex because it's all bogged down in the inner EU bureaucracy. I don't really see a lot that could be done there, short of I don't know, 20 angry billionaires really making a stink about it and kind of pushing for this. But yeah, it's a big issue. It's really a big issue.
Huge. And again, sounds like a conspiracy theory, sounds unreasonable. But then think about it, James, and you made Planet Lockdown. To the critical thinkers amongst the population, probably 10 or 15% who are pretty hardcore, what was happening was utterly absurd and in our face absurd. And hey all, just a brief interlude here to remind you that my next weight loss masterclass online workshop is this Thursday, the 15th of May. So around 2.5 hours of the best possible information and guidelines and templates and tools to lose weight healthily and massively increase your health level and blood test results at the same time. So I do these every month or so. The next one's this Thursday, 15th. Love to see you there, and ivorcumminsworkshops.com is where you'll get the link and where you can book in to join us on Thursday and start stripping off those pounds and looking fantastic. So anyway, we'll get back to James. The majority, though, said there's no way all our experts can somehow be in collusion. All the top brass and governments are working together in a sense in a kind of conspiracy to drive this nonsense. So the vast majority of people couldn't quite psychologically go there. And part of it was fear as well. And you mentioned this interestingly already. Part of it is the fear that something of that nature is too big and too stressful. So the mind naturally shuts it out as na 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 na. But here we are. We've been through the cerveza sickness, as George Gavin calls it, to not be censored. We've been through that, and we've seen all the other madness of monkeypox and the bird flu nonsense, and then all the proxy wars and the nuttery that's going on in the Middle East. So we see all of the madness. The mass migration is in people's faces now, and even in Ireland it's getting so insane. People begin to realise there's some kind of plan going on here, and it ain't just random. So people are beginning to build. In America, yourself and David Webb, there's at least one, or is there two states now who have actually passed to I don't know, emasculate this crazy great taking law, to take out those exceptions and put people back actually owning their securities, pensions, bank balances, etc.?
No, it's not been passed anywhere. Like people didn't really call in enough, and so it was killed. But I mean, a member of the Guggenheim family flew into Tennessee in 2024 and 2025 to oppose it. That's a really big Rothschild connected family. I mean, this has really gotten their attention. You can see it's a really real issue. In 2024, they admitted on the stand they are playing with the securities as collateral. They are kept in pooled accounts. I mean, this is sort of an open secret. I think I would encourage people just to get off their ass and take 10 minutes a week to call in and do that. I'm not sure it'll happen in time if to change it, but if I mean, there's definitely growing awareness, and I think it helps, but really, people need to take an initiative. I mean, you and I do things like this, but the average person really can just take a few issues and make a difference. I mean, it doesn't take a lot just to let your voice be heard in the right places. Call your local representative and tell them that you like that. Go to your local school meetings. I mean, go to a few of these little things and put in an hour a week, or even a month. And I think if everyone did that, we could see big differences. So there's this sort of
Yeah.
like controlled apathy. What do you call it? Learned helplessness, and people just passively consuming all this scary information and not doing anything. So it's really important just to do some little thing, it's not the
Engage. I mean, Eddie Hobbs, who's been kind of cancelled in Ireland, but he's a financial expert specialist, and he was, of course, cancelled because he's too outspoken on what was going on during the GFC and the bondholders getting paid off. So he's gotten thoroughly cancelled, but he has written letters to the department laying out the great taking, demanding a response, freedom of information. Are they aware? And they just keep putting him off. But even that, it's some action, and it's making people in the system aware of what's actually going on. If there was a lot of that, and a lot of people, all politics is local, if a lot of people started, rather than whining in Telegram groups and talking about chemtrails and, white hats and all this stuff, if they focused on local politics, where they have access, where they can share information, discuss things rationally, if there was a lot of that, this thing would teeter and ultimately could fall. But you're absolutely right, James. The problem is people I see now getting into groups and basically bitching and whining and getting scared, like that's losing your mental strength. When you are threatened at these levels, you have to go the opposite way and get cold as ice. Use your prefrontal cortex, your human brain, plan, strategize, lay out, be calm. This is what we need, guys. This is what we need from you. Well, where do you get the movie? Because I guess the movie will really, we've touched on the core, but the movie in an entertaining, and I know with you, in a very high quality way. Let's talk about the movie, the interviewees, and then get to where it's available, all importantly, where people can help by, of course, sharing it. So let's get into the movie a little more.
Yeah, it's on my YouTube channel, and Big Picture Watch is my main site. I have all these interviews with David, but I mean, the main film site is thegreattakingreport.com. So it's thegreattakingreport.com, and I got the interviews, a lot of the hearing footage, hearing recordings on there on one page, and several interviews with David where he's describing the issues again and again. And then the film. So the film, I guess some of the main characters are like David, and then you got there's a lawyer, Don Grande. He's this attorney in North Dakota who just heard about it and crafted a bill and put it forth. He works with this Pro Family Institute. Um, then I got there's Bud Halsey, was the state representative from Tennessee. He's a real like cowboy type guy, and he's really funny guy. And he's like, he put it forth, and he's like, if you want to get your money back, this bill lets you get your money back if they fail. So I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, it was, and also and Antonio Parkinson was a member of the Black Caucus, like a Democrat from Tennessee, which is pretty rare. And he was really grilling Andy Guggenheim on the stand, going like, well, what, are you pulling the assets? Are you using the stocks as collateral? And he's like, well, like he's like, you have property rights, you have property rights. Well, yeah, yeah, they are used in the pool. They are used out of the pools. And it was like it was pretty funny where he really put it on him, and he admitted it. So it's quite revealing that we just got it into these hearings, and it makes it really real. It's not just like some book making some claim. Like we got it in front of these hearings. So I think that had a lot of power to it, even though it failed. Let's see, in 2024 it was in these two states. 2025 it got in front of, I think, 10 states and was defeated in 10 states. But we really need people to call in and put pressure on this, because once one of these laws is passed, it doesn't mean the whole thing comes apart right away. I mean, it just means that now people, big brokerage, big firms can sign a new custodial agreement in that state under those state laws. And so it doesn't change all the existing contracts outstanding. It only would affect new ones, with that big firms would be able to negotiate written in a different way. And then they would be able to have clear title. It wouldn't change these bigger the bigger architecture of the financial system. Um, but this is basically kind of the plumbing of like how you own nothing and be happy. It's a 29 style crash where your life savings is wiped out, and then you're left kind of, up shit's creek. And then this kind of more poorer world the UN is talking about, the C40 initiative of the 15-minute cities, like not eating meat, living in your little zone. And then these kind of things start to make more sense because they sound really detached from reality now. And then these CBDCs are on the horizon. So this sort of, I don't know, my thinking is kind of that a lot of these war scenarios that are being pushed now, blackouts, they could be a war could be used as a really great pretext for a collapse, like, so I'm starting a new film also on war, as we kind of enter World War III. So I hope to have it out before World War III starts. So yeah. But I mean, like for example, okay, so all your stocks and bonds, when you buy them in US or EU, your broker and your custodian really just have a bookkeeping entry, and they're kept up at these central securities depositories. In the United States, it's Deposit Trust Clearing Corporation that has like $87 trillion of stocks and bonds. And in EU, it's sort of Euroclear in Belgium, um, that has about 37 trillion euros worth of stocks and bonds. And then other parts of the world are like integrated to varying degrees, I'm learning, into the Euroclear and things, and DTCC. So, um, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I saw an article in Bloomberg like a year ago. They were saying, oh well, the EU sees Russia's state assets in Euroclear, that $300 billion that they seize, and they saying, well, this could cause a collateral crisis because who owns that? If the EU took it and now they're pulling that out of the collateral base, then the derivatives have to be levered down, or it just could create a crisis of the collateral. So, from that, I could kind of see how war could be used as a pretext to then create a market crisis. Oh, and blame Putin. It's his fault. So
Yeah.
this war thing could be a cover for the collapse. And also EU's breaking apart. EU's having trouble, and they're just violently pushing for war. It's just the whole thing is just very kooky.
it is somewhat, but again, stoicism, etc. I mean, you do what you can in what you can influence, but there is no point agonizing over what's outside your control. That's fate. So, as the Stoics say, amor fati, love fate, accept fate. But in the meantime, do your damnedest to change the future in what you can affect. And in this case, it'll be sharing these kinds of interviews, sharing the movie, getting awareness. And then hopefully we reach, I don't think I reach too many, billionaire class who have huge assets, but they need to get engaged because they have generally more influence and they're also just as much in the crosshairs as pretty much the little people. They just don't realize it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if we get a bunch of pissed off billionaires, then we can make a dent in this. I got
Yeah.
one from my PhD advisor. I'm trying to get it through his head that this all this stuff's at risk. So it's just really like people don't get it. And then when you started to show it to them, they're like, oh no, well, oh, my ass is covered. I'm pretty sure. And you're like, no, because even like I think we met at that Sweden conference. I think, yeah, the Swedish conference we met. I have a friend of a friend. He was saying there, oh, I have $1 billion, and I know I don't actually own it. I have it all in treasuries, and I don't really own it. I don't have clear title, and I'm nervous about it. So it's like now with this economic situation, Trump's tariffs, this is leading central banks to stop holding the U.S. Treasuries as collateral as the main kind of reserve and shift over to gold. You've seen the gold go up, and this Trump's tariffs and all this idiotic stuff is really screwing the dollar standing and the Treasury bond standing in the world as a reserve asset. So I mean, we're entering in this dicey territory, and I think a lot of people are going to need to take a closer look at, well, what financial planning do I need to do going into this? Because this is really unprecedented in history that you own a stock or a bond outright, no debt, and then they take it. You know, you don't really own it. That's just people aren't aware of that, and I think even people deep in the financial system aren't aware of it. I mean, David ran a hedge fund for many years, and he wasn't aware of it when he was doing that until after he retired.
Yeah, it's hard for people to get their heads around, but as you kind of wrap this up, there's an imperative for people to engage to prevent this madness happening because a lot of evil people, and I was reading recently about a book where someone goes through the 4 stages of where we end up today, just how kind of psychopathic type individuals tend towards rising to the top, highly competitive, and then through the phases you end up with dominance, and ultimately then you have kind of revolutions. But the fact is, we've been soft since World War II. And that's the sad thing. The people back around post-World War II would never have rolled over with the COVID flu nonsense. No way. So a few generations outside of major conflict you're engaged in, major events, you just get softer and softer. Add in the mobile phones and all the nonsense and the indoctrination of our multiple generations now in the schools to be absolute followers and to put critical thinking in the dustbin. So I don't mean to be negative, we got a challenge, but it is not too late for people to rise up, get engaged, communicate, talk with your head high. Don't worry if you're called an anti-this or an anti-that. That's all nonsense and propaganda. But on the other side, and I'll probably finish with this, James, on the other side, it's okay to personally protect yourself. That's not cowardly to personally cover yourself because it means you'll still be around to push back if the worst thing happens. So it seems there physical gold. Again, people say, oh, you're connected to a gold company. I don't care. The point is physical gold for me. And back in 2020, I saw it. I had a phrase, metal and dirt, that I made up myself in late 2020 because I was looking at what was going on. Not even the great taking. Didn't know about that. But I was looking at what's going on. I said, right, precious metals and maybe land. So you could argue about deeds to land, couldn't you? Metal and dirt. And now primarily metal. I mean, it just seems to me such an imperative.
Yeah, I mean, gold is definitely a key asset right now. I mean, central banks are doing that. They're moving from treasury bonds.
Mhm.
The irony is you buy a treasury bond, you think it's the most secure, and then they're using it the most as the collateral. I saw a BIS document saying they're leveraging it up 150 times in some years. So, I mean, you're better off just buying gold and just holding it. And it's not making you money if it's rising in price. It's just holding the value, and the damn dollar or euro are going up or inflating. So we're entering a time where you just need to preserve your ass, not, I mean, and not lose it. That's sort of the kind of probably the next decade we're heading through.
Yeah. And I interviewed a couple of weeks ago Simon Hunt, and I interviewed last week Matt Peipenberg, who's amazing. So he's been an expert in bonds, equities, and then he transitioned into precious metal over 10 years ago because of the retention of wealth in these crazy times. But both of them, I brought up the point about the Bank of International Settlements 2019, a landmark change where physical gold was moved from tier, I think, 2B, way down, right to tier 1 as the only other gold standard tier 1 asset alongside US sovereign debt, like the dollar. And they both laughed and made the same joke that no, there's still only one tier 1. It's gold, because the dollar, forget about being tier 1 now.
Yeah, they're when you buy a treasury, it's being used as the backing for more loans. And this is precisely what makes it a good quality loan. Also, what makes it a good quality buy is also makes it the best collateral. So that's this irony. And actually now that's kind of the monetary policy. If they raise the interest rates on the treasury bond, that actually makes the collateral worth less and then the whole money market shrinks. So it's like there's all these dynamics to it that I think are pretty volatile. We went from zero interest rates for many years now to have these hiked rates, and that's collapsed the collateral. So there's just a lot of stuff going on that's pretty risky that I think people should know about, and financial people need to factor this into their risk models.
Absolutely, James. That's a great summary. People need to hedge for themselves, their families, to be in a better position to push back against madness when it occurs, if and when it occurs, and also talk about this. It's the most important thing you could be talking about. People don't realize that. They talk about all kinds of stuff and all kinds of crap that's going on in the world. This actually is probably the kernel of it all.
This is the biggest financial fraud story in world history. So check out the film at thegreattakingreport.com. And if you're a finance guy, you want a more sophisticated report, I have a report there. But you got all the hearings and everything, and watch the film. It makes it real when you go into the state houses and try to do something with it.
Great stuff, James. So the Great Taking, our greattakingreport.com or the
Thegreattakingreport.com. Yeah.
thegreattakingreport.com. I'll put it on the screen. Good man, James. We'll catch up soon, I believe, I think in a couple of weeks in Switzerland.
Yeah, you'll be there. Great. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll maybe share a car from Italy up into Switzerland and do some preparation.
Yeah. That'll be cool.
Prepping.
Great.
Good luck,
Thanks,
James.
Trevor.
Have a great one.
You too.
I know. Well, that'll do it, folks. James is on the ball. He's going to be finding out a lot more in the coming months, and the link is down below to his website. Do watch the movie and make sure we're all as informed as possible. And as mentioned, I'm hedging myself, and James is, and all the others that I interview in the financial world, with physical gold. So really important, no gold ETFs, no paper gold, not worth the paper it's written on, especially in a Great Taking. But the link's down below. You'll get a free consultation, a free period of storage with the excellent guys at Pure Gold UK, if indeed you wish to go down that route and begin to look at protecting yourself and your family. So that'll do it, folks. Bye now.